Good afternoon, members of the press located here at the Center for Change, and also to members of the media that are joining our press conference live through Zoom. Let me welcome you to the first press conference of the Alliance for Change for this wonderful year 2024. Let me start by extending our party's wishes for good health, safety, and of course, prosperity for all Guyana and for members of the media specifically. This afternoon, we have joining us via Zoom. Actually, give me a second. Let me switch off this. Good. Just so we don't have that feedback. Yes, this afternoon, joining us via Zoom, we will have Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan and also Dr. Vince Adams. And of course, with me here this afternoon, I'm happy, starting from my extreme left, to introduce to you once again Mr. David Patterson, Executive Member, Jurita Finance, Executive Member, myself, Kathy Hughes, and of course, Ricky Ramsaru, all being members of Parliament. Doing the technical this afternoon, also in the room, is Sherrod Duncan with us. So we wanted to start with a statement. Unfortunately, Mr. Ramjatan is driving to his location at the moment. Is he on? Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
So, Kemraj, can
you guys hearing me?
Read your statement? I'm happy I don't need to.
Okay. This has to do with the debate between Christopher Ram and AG Nandlal. The AFC has noted the debate between AG Nandlal and Mr. Christopher Ram concerning the Natural Resource Fund and what revenues should not be in it, and the Consolidated Fund and what revenues should be in it from the receipts of Guyana's share of the oil monies consequent upon the 2016 PSA. There is undoubtedly a misapprehension, if not an incomprehension, by the government's chief legal advisor on the issue. The AFC commends Mr. Ram for bringing clarity to the public on the matter and to force an understanding into the learned Attorney General when a series of questions were posed to him. These questions are still to be answered by the Attorney General, who has surprisingly gone non-responsive. As is correctly posited by Mr. Ram, the Natural Resource Fund is a sovereign wealth fund created under special separate legislation to govern, manage, invest, and use our oil monies. This fund has a completely different structure and purpose from the Consolidated Fund, which is effectively the operating fund for the financial operations of ministries, departments, and budget agencies, and which is managed by public servants in a decentralized framework. Since the payment of the taxes for Exxon must be paid out of the revenues from the Guyana government, pursuant to the terms of the 2016 PSA, and since this government believes in sanctity of contract, it necessarily follows that the corporate taxes must be paid to GRA and placed into the Consolidated Fund. This payment thus lessens the amount received into the NRF. Our Consolidated Fund is increased to the extent of that amount. The point as to where public monies should be deposited was apparently missed by the Attorney General. The AFC wishes to remind everyone that Section 38(1) of the Financial Management and Accountability Act 2003 provides this: all public monies raised or received by the government shall be credited fully and promptly to the Consolidated Fund, except A, monies credited to an extra budgetary fund as stipulated in the enabling legislation establishing that fund. Now, this statutory provision accords with Article 216 of the Constitution, and I need not read out that lengthy constitutional provision. The AFC asserts that the Natural Resource Fund and the Consolidated Fund are thus separate things. So the oil company corporate taxes paid by the government of Ghana to the GRA must be sent to the Consolidated Fund, and the rest of the oil earnings must go to the Natural Resource Fund. So the supremacy of the law on this situation must lie with the Constitution and the specific legislation, Section 38(1) of the Financial Management and Accountability Act, rather than the NRF as erroneously posited by the Attorney General. The fact of leaving the revenues in the NRF fattens that fund, increases that fund to the corresponding thinning of the consolidated fund. Since the NRF is to be only used as per Section 16(2) of the NRF to finance, 1, national development priorities, and 2, major national disasters, this NRF will continue to be abused as the government will declare any contract to its friends and family as national development priorities. There is thus a method to the madness of overstating the NRF to the extent of an equivalent understatement of the Consolidated Fund. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kemraj. And I will ask Member of Parliament Jurita Finance to make her presentation on the party's recommendations for the budget.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My statement reads, looking at the budget 2024 and the expectations of the people. Like every other budget, under every government, the upcoming budget, this being the 2024 budget, will be the largest ever. However, for the first time in the history of Guyana, the budget is expected to be over $1 trillion. This expectation is based on the fact that in addition to the budgeted expenditure of $781.9 billion, the PPP government submitted 5 additional financial papers for the year 2023 that total $118.2 billion, bringing the year to an end with a total approved sum of $900.1 billion. Of the $900 billion, we are yet to see the commencement of several projects. Some projects are merely now seeing the soil being turned. And for the projects that have started, there are numerous public outcry about the poor standard of works being carried out by the friends and family contractors associated with the PPP government. Of the $118 billion additional sums approved during the year, 2023 ended without numerous projects starting. For example, 2023 ended without the Barkutah Road being started after monies were approved in the National Assembly on the 9th of August, 2023 towards that project. This is just one example of what's to be expected after large sums of monies continues to be budgeted and approved in the National Assembly. The enthusiasm that Guyanese had for the first oil budget has deflated over the years as the PPP administration continues to present budget after budget with no real tangible benefit to the ordinary man and woman. However, Guyanese still have basic expectations from the government for the budget 2024. Among these expectations, Guyanese expect free education
Not hearing Giretto.
Investment in the public transportation system, increase in old age pension to $70,000, an increase in budgeted allocations to GCOM to cater for a more superior system that includes, but is not limited to, biometrics. Remove the cost of residential house lots, significantly invest in national security, equitable adjustment and increasing cost of living allowance, investment in provision for public transportation, that's redundant a little bit, reduction in the interest rate for homeowners, increase subvention to the NDCs that will not be subjected to central government directives, monetary provisions for first-time home builders. Those expectations are certainly reasonable for the nation to expect, given the expected $1 trillion budget. Additionally, with more money being budgeted for expenditure, the opposition expects to be given more time in the consideration of the estimates, as it is unreasonable to expect any real scrutiny of a budget over $1 trillion to be done within the same time frame that was used to scrutinize $200 billion budgets. Those are some of the reasonable expectations of Budget 2024. But like every other Guyanese, we will not hold our breath for the PPP to come through for this nation once again. I thank you.
Thank you, Jurita. And with the help of our technical officer this afternoon, I will open us up for questions from the media. You know the usual requirements. And Sherrod, if you would just signal when we have questions from those on Zoom and let me know. But in the meantime, we are open.
Swatlana Marshall from News Source. MP Finance, with respect to the budget, could you say if AFC or the opposition as a collective was able to submit its proposal to the government for serious consideration? And yesterday, the Vice President indicated that no new taxes would be imposed on the people of Guyana. How do you view that announcement as a startup?
For the first question, no, the PPP administration has not consulted the opposition for any budget since they took office, maybe in a parliamentarian, I'm speaking of this period. And furthermore, I would say that the PPP administration has failed to consult unions throughout the length and breadth of this country when it comes to the budget. I found it a bit hilarious to see after the budget date was announced to be the 15th of January, photos were coming out with the finance minister having meetings with the private sector as part of consultations, and I found those to be photo ops. I have not seen any real show of consultation by any member of the government throughout the length and breadth of the country in any sector whatsoever towards this budget. So that is new. That is a no. When it comes to the Mr. Jagdeo saying there's no new taxes, I expect nothing less. I expect nothing less from a budget that is expected to be over $1 trillion than no new taxes. But what I further expect as we are proffering here today is that there would also be a reduction in tax, a reduction in VAT. We're asking for the threshold, the income tax threshold to be increased to $150,000. Those are real meaning. To come and say no new taxes, that we don't expect any new tax. We expect a reduction in taxation.
Thank you, Jurita. I think Ricky Ramsroop had a comment to make too.
Yeah, in addition to your question, in terms of consultation, we all know how the governments operate in terms of consultation. They will pick a certain institution and they will have this big photo up and say they consulted. I've learned this morning also that they have not consulted in the Central Quarantine Chamber of Commerce, simply because those persons are not familiar with them and not friends with them. And I've learned that even to some of the other private organizations, like the associations, are not being consulted with. So I just want to add that bit in.
Thank you, Ricky.
Right. Shamar Musa from the Guyana Chronicle. On the point of consultation, we saw recently coming out there was some shuffling in the shadow portfolios for the Parliament. Can the AFC say whether it was consulted in relation to the reshuffling of these portfolios? And what does the party make of the decisions that were made by the leader of the opposition?
David, you want to take it?
Camera is on, so the
Yes,
leader can
yeah.
take it.
Kamraj, can we ask you to?
Yeah, I would like to say that indeed the leader of the opposition did tell me effectively what are some of his changes and the reconfiguration. And I understand 2 days ago at a parliamentarians meeting, he did put it to those parliamentarians, and I understand that there was some discussion. I think one person, Jermaine Figueroa, made some criticisms of it internally. I saw that in the newspapers. I was absent from that meeting as I was in the High Court, and but I understand that he did put it over to his members for discussion or probably for information. I have no problems with it. Just like the president can deal with the issue of who are his ministers, to a certain extent, the leader of the opposition can deal with the situation in his what you call opinion. This person will perform better there in his opinion. I will perform better in public security as against agriculture and certain other certain other personnel. And so I didn't have an objection. It is he's a new leader of the opposition after Mr. Joe Harmon. Mr. Joe Harmon had put me into the agriculture sector, and you accept basically what the leader of the opposition say. And I did that, and of course now he feels a little different in relation to some people. I notice it's a storm in a teacup in the press, but that's my attitude to it.
Thank you, Kamraj. I think we have a question from Divina of Kaito News.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. As Ms. Hughes said, this is Davina with Kaito News. Just a few from me, please. First of all, can the AFC say what are its thoughts on the draft gas strategy? And given government's handling with the oil sector, are you concerned that government is biting off more than it can chew, and is at risk of leaving Guyana with with more revenue loss? And secondly, are you disappointed that the government is on the cusp of granting a sixth project and the nation is yet to see proof of the US $2 billion parent guarantee for oil spills?
Our oil and gas spokesperson can deal with that, and he's there.
You hear me, Kathy? Hello.
Yeah. David, go ahead, David.
Yeah, sorry, Davina. On the first issue of the gas strategy, I would have made a statement because obviously, like the rest of the country, I was eagerly awaiting the gas strategy by the government. I think it fell short of any expectation. It fell short even in high school students' research paper. So I've heard that it was only, I mean, they use all sorts of strange words in it. I mean, I know I've heard it paid $20,000 US for it. So it's very hard for us to comment on a non-existent gas strategy. I mean, We know during our tenure, that we had the Japanese government who did a total master plan for us, and that's still very, very relevant. We also had an energy diversification plan, which is still relevant. And we had a report on gas from Energy Narratives, which is still relevant. We would hope that the government would start there. I mean, we've heard that Exxon had their own gas strategy. I would warn against us adopting that, because obviously the goals of Exxon is purely monetary as opposed to developmental. And I do hope that that we look more for our gas strategy to develop for the sector. I also note, if you permit me to say this, when the government launched the much vaunted gas ashore project there was a great talk about all the other spin-off benefits that the country will get: urea, fertilizers, plastics. And they just said those things to justify it to the people. They have, as you can see now, there's no strategy. Even the school childish strategy that they produced said that was not feasible. So we're building a 2.7 billion gas ashore project, which can only power, if it ever finishes, it can only power the generators and give us these things. So they keep telling us it's out there 1.7 million cubic feet per day available. We're not seeing it. The Exxon, when I met with Exxon, when the opposition met with Exxon in July, acknowledged that some of their fields contains quite amount of associated gas, but those fields are not in their developmental plans at the moment. So I don't know what strategy we can speak on. The sixth license without having full liability coverage. Obviously, that's not something that we in Alliance for Change support. We've called for full liability coverage from day one, from Lisa 1 and onwards. We warn about it. The more fields and FPSOs you put in and you bring into operation, the risk of a spill increases proportionally. So obviously now, I mean, if we were worried after just 1 or 2 FPSOs, we have 3 operating now. It raises by 100% by the time the 6th is in. So and obviously we're thinking full liability coverage for all 6, not the $2 billion. I do think they'll try to say the $2 billion should cover all 6, but we would like full liability cover for all offshore development. Was there another question?
I wanted to know, what are your thoughts on the fact that Ghana is yet to see that $2 billion guarantee that Exxon said it provided the government with? We see some folks went to court to see that document, but it's yet to be made public. What are your thoughts in that regard?
Well, that should cause us all alarm, because obviously that this $2 billion guarantee is actually tied to a court case, and to overrule Justice Kissoon's position, they said there $2 billion guarantee has been lodged with EPA. We haven't seen anything. I mean, I can't see why. I mean, it's quite disappointed. And we should be very alarmed, even though it's an inadequate amount. At least what it demonstrates is that Exxon and the government at least obeys our laws. If the court says you must have these things lodged and reveal them publicly, it's incumbent on them to obey our laws. So obviously, we would like to see an open and transparent accountability for the sector.
Kati, could you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Yeah, let me add something here. And this is not a question of what the opposition thinks and believe now as to whether we would have issued a permit, if you will, for the sixth project. We would not have issued a permit to operate the third project, the Payara project. We had made it clear. We put it into the permit, into the law, in Lisa 2, that you cannot, from now, if starting with Lisa 2, you cannot start to operate or cannot operate without full liability coverage. And for Payara 3, we told them, for the third project, Payara, we had told them, we made it very clear that if we did not get that signed guarantee, because you remember the Lisa 2 started operating in 2022. So we signed the agreement the permit in 2019, the Lisa 2 permit in 2019. So we had 3 years for them to sign that parent company guarantee before the Lisa 2 started up. So the Lisa 2 would not have been operating without that signed parent company guarantee. And when the Payara came up in 2020, we told them that we will not sign the Payara without that parent company guarantee. So we would not have even gotten to the sixth project. It would have been there in the second project, which is the Lisa 2. So the opposition position was clear. It wasn't even we would not have even been talking about a $2 billion guarantee. We would have been the discussion, the $2 billion would never have even come into discussion. All we would have been talking about was a full parent company guarantee that Exxon was already agreed to. As a matter of fact, in 2020, when we told them that we will not sign the Payara without that signed guarantee, we had finalized that and was ready to sign it in August of 2020. And then, of course, I was removed, and I was removed, sent on leave in August. And in September, they went ahead and signed the agreement, not the agreement, they signed the permit without the guarantee. And that's what has taken us here. So don't let us forget what has taken us here. The opposition would have stood up, and Exxon would have abided by it. They had already agreed to abide with it. And when the government changed, that's what has gotten us here, because now the government has switched from supporting the people, and they've now become partners with Exxon to appeal the case that was a sound judgment by Judge Kassoon. So that's the position. We wouldn't have gotten to the sixth project. They would not have started Lisa 2 to start with. They would not have started up Lisa 2 without that parent company guarantee. And I guarantee you that they would have signed it before Lisa 2 was ready to start.
Thank you, Vince.
Can I be allowed two final questions, Ms. Hughes?
Let me come back to you, Davina, if you don't mind. I've got persons that have been waiting for a while. Randy Sambach. Oh, Renee. My apologies, Renee.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have a few questions. My first question is for Mr. Ramjatan. Mr. Ramjatan, did the opposition leader ever share his concerns with you regarding the statement made by Mr. Patterson on the oil and gas sector? My second question is for Mr. Patterson. The Vice President made some comments yesterday blaming the coalition government for turning the US $150 million CGIA project, which was supposed to be a new airport, into a rehab project. Can you respond to this? And my third question, is the government's development outstripping our capacity? We don't have contractors to meet the housing program they are pushing, as well as facing a shortages of nurses and other health professionals. What's your take on this?
Well, let me just start off by stating no, the leader of the opposition never talk to me about any objection to ring fencing as supported by David Patterson. As a matter of fact, from what I have been speaking to him about, I get the impression he supports the amendment and renegotiation to have ring fencing.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Renee. The vice president, as usual, is being very economical with the truth when it comes to CGIA. I don't know if you know this. Give me 2 minutes now to 1 minute to explain to you that the CGIA project was one of the last big disasters that Barajaglio did as president. He was demitting office. Elections were about 2 weeks away when he signed the 150 million. No advertising, there's no project document, there's no feasibility study, there's absolutely nothing. 2 weeks before the general elections in 2011, they signed this contract. You know what I mean? Of course, we know from Vice News how these contracts are operated. The contract was signed in 2011, of course, with absolutely nothing, committing the government to the Guyana people to $150 million. No work started until 2013. The initial contract that they signed, and this is the important part, Mr. Rennie, was to extend the airport, and it was all going to extend southward. Immediately when they started doing work, what was discovered is that their dreams because they never studied it, we couldn't go southward anymore. Or they were going into swamp and a creek and it was impossible. So and then of course, and that was, by the time they discovered this, is 4.5 years later, in February of 2015. 4.5 years later, and $70 million already sunk into it. So when we took over, Cabinet said to us, and said to me as the minister, that we've already spent so much money, we can't stop because obviously you lose half the money already. What is required is a completed project of server project with no additional money. So what we did, because the most important element of a airport is the runway. So we completed the runway. The disaster, what they left us with, we completed it. They had anticipated it will take something like 7 million cubic feet of sand to do it. It actually took almost 20 million cubic feet to fill up all the drains and those things like that. That money, the extra money, right, went into the runway, which we have a world-class, the second longest runway in the Caribbean, the most modern, with the most equipment, that was all done on the earth. The remaining funds of the 150 built you a new departure lounge, a new arrival, and we renovated a brand new arrival lounge, bigger than what they had, and we renovated a departure lounge. For him to say it's a renovation project, of course, he's been economical with the truth. And I guarantee you, this country should be grateful for the AP and UFC administration. If left up to them 4.5 years, we would have had a runway that is sinking today. We may not even have that length runway. But of course, he's been economical with the truth. You know, I mean, we were able to complete that entire project for the same $150 million. And of course, now 3.5 years after they've taken office, they still haven't finished. If you pass there, there's still construction going on. They're adding this, they're adding that. They still have no plan. All the plans that we had, they abandoned. But I can say this, and I'm glad you brought this up, and folks, just give me another 2 seconds. When we left in 2019, we signed in an effort, and this is how, in an effort to ensure that we have the most functional airport, we purchased 10 e-kiosks. We went out to bid to Canada, United States, India, and Germany, and we purchased 10 e-kiosks, whereby returning Guyanese will swipe their passports, and within 60 seconds, that's how the system is designed. You swipe your passport, you're returning Guyanese, the Guyanese machine readable passport. Within 60 seconds, you would have been cleared. You just get a printout, like we do when you travel to other developed countries. They were purchased. NDMA made all the connections, all the data management. CGIA under myself made all the points available. We paid. The company was out to Canada. I think it was Canadian banknote. I can't remember the exact amount, but under the Ministry of Citizenship headed by Winston Fees at the time, in 2019, we paid the 25% deposit. 2020, of course, the government changes and they took that all out. I don't know what they did with the money. So what we have here now, and they would like to try and say it's because of the coalition. When you come back at arrival, you have a massive long queue. But we had the vision since 2019, 4 years ago, to have 10 e-kiosks. And if it takes 60 seconds, we could have dispatch of all Guyanese coming in on an aircraft within 15 to 20 minutes of landing. Everybody, all Guyanese would have been already into the baggage. That is the difference between what we had, and you can tell Mr. Barry Jagdo, I said that. You can even ask him if you want to deny it. You can ask him to contact me. We are not economically true. We are obviously warfare thinking and will become next time. And you've asked a very good question, capacity. And obviously, I know the vice president and the PPP said that we would do studies and those things like that. We wouldn't do anything like that. There's an old saying, measure twice, cut once. Not these guys. They don't measure at all, and they cut as many times as one. And I say cut figuratively because, obviously they give each other cuts out of it. That's what they, when the debate was on about oil revenues and our natural resource fund, we had experts in from, I think, IDB and World Bank who helped us with our draft and natural resource fund. And they went around to each ministry, but I could speak to the Ministry of Public Infrastructure. And they said to us, and I said to my team, give us your dream list. Give us where you dream, all the projects that you dreamed about. And wow, we had a list. We want to bridge Essequibo, we want the skyscrapers, we want to bring back airlines and those things like that. And they put a cost to it. And then they said, realistically, how many of these dream projects can you do in a year? And we said, okay, fair enough. If we could only do maybe two, because they're big projects, 2 billion. We could only do 1 or 2 per year. They said to us, if you stagger it, right? And that's how we developed our formula for the Natural Resources Fund bit. But if you stagger it over 10 years, you can get every single thing that you ever dreamed about. You'd have enough capacity to do it. There wouldn't be no stalled projects and everything like that. And you don't have to borrow a single cent. That's how our Natural Resource Fund initially was drafted. Because we recognize we have a capacity problem in this country. Not enough sand, not enough stone, not enough labor, not the poor electricity and those things like that. But the PPP are, as I said, they have a different formula. They throw everything. And then when, as we are seeing now, when all the projects are stalled, the vice president said, don't blame the government. But who do we blame? They started a project. As Jurita said, they came for $900 billion. Yet, they haven't spent it all. Ministry of Public Works, I was able to get from Ministry of Finance their disbursement, which I'll talk about during the budget or release. They're struggling. They are struggling. So therefore, that's why in December you saw a lot of people on Christmas Day digging up drains and those things like that, and people running around. They were trying to spend almost $14 billion of money on these things like that. So person got rich. Certain supporters got a very, very good Christmas gift. So yes, we do have a capacity problem. and the government will compound it with this $1 trillion budget because they're throwing money out without even spending what they had before. Thank you.
Hey, Kathy,
Just follow up, please.
Yes.
Kathy, could I before the follow up, could I
Sure.
quickly
Go ahead.
add a little to what David said? In any project, or even running a project or running a government starts with planning, doing feasibility studies, doing EIAs, etc. The government has made it clear, Mr. Jagdeo himself has made it clear that that's not part of how they operate. You know, he criticized, he lambasted in his press conference up to yesterday that all the opposition wants to do is to do studies. Well, you have to do feasibility studies, which they didn't do for the gas for the gas to show project. Now, I heard something yesterday that was very, very revealing, which is fundamental to managing project to make sure. And when you go into a project, you have to make sure it comes in on schedule and within cost, and you monitor that on a daily basis. I heard something very revealing yesterday, which was outstanding. The vice president said, and you can go back and look at that press conference. The vice president said that delays are part of a project. Delays are not part of a project if you plan a project correctly. He said that. He said you have to live with it. And you only have to live with it if that has become part of your principle of your project. Delays are something, that is why you have project management, is to make sure you don't have delays, because delays results in cost. And of course, if a delay in time, and time is money. He even went as far, I couldn't believe that the excuses have gone to now from blaming Jumbies for holding up projects to now saying that, well, delays, you just have to live with it. That is irresponsible, not only from a project management standpoint, but in terms of running a country, to say that delays are inevitable. That is absolute nonsense, and I guess it's just maybe ignorance too.
Thank you, Prince. Renee, just quickly your follow-up, and then we have Adam Harris, and then Antonio. Sorry, Dennis. So we're gonna try and ask
Renee.
Renee.
Hi, Mr. Patterson. In relation to the air bridges, Mr. Jagdeo mentioned yesterday that the contract was signed for 8 air bridges. Can you say how it ended up to 4? And Mr. Hughes, can you provide an update on the case filed against Jagdeo?
Oh, listen to me. As I said, Mr. Jagdeo has been, it's a stranger to the truth, uneconomical. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to use any words that has to be edited out on the television, right? But that man is a bare face, you know what I mean? Beep, 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 beep. In 2011, there was nothing. They just signed, we would like an international airport of international standards. The Chinese took 2.5 years to come up with, because of design and build. So they signed it saying, this is the budget. This is what we want. We want an international airport, and we want a runway of 1,000 feet and so forth. They had nothing at all but air bridges. By the time I took over in 2015, and this is documented, and this is like the usual thing that you say if you tell a lie, and I'm sorry about that word, but it's true. If you tell a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. In 2014, Roops and Ben, I'm calling names now, Roops and Ben, right, signed, and the consultant said, listen to me, we could only have 4 air bridges because if you put another air bridge further up, you take away that big, long taxiway, and you have to move the control tower, and which would have been millions of euros. Roops and Ben signed up and said, listen to me, we only have 4 air bridges, right? So what Jagdeo and Ejil and those untruthful persons say is that the Chinese said, listen to me, here's what we're going to do. We can give you a tiny little hub, a little hub, you know, and we can put one of their variations. You know, we can give you a tiny little hub with 1,000 square feet, and we could do it like a spoke on a wheel, on a hub on a wheel. So you have a really tiny little hub, no thing, and we're gonna build a terminal somewhere else if you want, but not there. So he is absolute no good, beep beep beep, and he continues to say so. And I challenge him, and I challenge any one of them. I mean, I've always said this. This is like just a mile of Falls. They always gets up and talk about this and they talk about that, and then they go to the press conference. I challenge him and Edgil. They have all the documents. Why haven't they ever published the 8 air bridges contract or design that they have? Why haven't they ever published the economic study on the rate of exchange for a mile of Falls? Why have they ever published any study on the gas to shore project? Because there's none. But if they say it, and respectful journalists like you are obligated to repeat it and write it, it somehow becomes the truth. Absolute nonsense.
Thank you, David. I want to go to Adam Harris. Adam, apologies for the delay in the time we're getting to the conversation. Please pose your question.
You know, I don't mind waiting. I enjoy this, and Mr. Patterson was very elucidating. I love it. But my question is to Ms. Finance. Ms. Finance, in the presentation of the budget, I would have expected the government to go to the various RDCs for their budget. And I know that the opposition has control of some of these RDCs. Was the opposition involved in preparing anything at all for the RDC budget? And if so, could you tell us what were some of those things? Because they might very well be excluded from budget 2024.
All right. What I can tell you, Mr. Harris, and that's a very important question indeed, but what I can tell you is prior to 2020, the policy was, and the coalition government had a policy in which it very clearly defined how the regional budgets are done at the level of the NDCs and so forth. Now, what I can tell you with absolute certainty is that even in areas, and I can speak about Region 7, for example, you had the finance, the REO coming down to have meetings and to have a document prepared and bring it before the central PPP execs here in Georgetown. And then going back to the people in Bartica to say, oh, well, basically this is what it is. The system of having meetings and coming up with whatever the region believes should be on the budget and all of that is not something that the PPP like to adhere to. And when they do say that they go to these people, it's done in a very haphazard manner. So there's no real consultation and bringing back of information from these elected representatives within the region. So what we had before, and Mr. Patterson could confirm also, is that these elected representatives actually had to sign off on these documents and so these are the things that we want. We will remember that it was Region 4 chairman complained bitterly when they said they outlined things within the budget before, and when it came back, those things were not included. The PP government has a track record of not honoring any sort of consultation, even when it is to the level of elected officials being part of that system. So I hope that answers your question, Mr. Harris.
I think Ricky Ramsrup also has an addition to make on that.
Thank you, Adam, for that question. And to add what Jurita said, also I am a geographical representation for region number 4. And to be honest, it's the same thing that's for region 7 is what's happening in region 4. Where the REO is the one who determines the entire budget. So despite what the councillors them are saying, they're not having their way. In fact, some of them don't even know where these projects are being developed or who are the contractors for these projects. Everything is being controlled by the REO. And I want to add more to this. In 2022, I have examined the road that was done in 2022. When I look at the number of roads that was built, especially in the stronghold of the PPP, they had about 96 roads that was built, over about $2 billion in road. When I compared it to our stronghold areas, there was 6 roads. And that is the reason why we were calling and telling about discrimination. And yesterday evening, I visited Victoria, and we have examined the road. Not a single road in Victoria is done for the past 3 years, not a single road. And if you check my Facebook profile, you will see the condition of those roads. When we have a look at the infrastructure for the power, all the poles, we went to Victoria Bellevue Sideline Dam. All the poles have been almost in the trench, Adam, in a very, very deplorable state. And some of the posts, one almost like 10 feet from someone's house. That's the condition. Not a single person from the region went to visit this location. So we have a lot of trouble when it comes to the budget allocation for the region.
Kathy, could I ask you to? I would like to leave at this point because the funeral has started that I came down from.
Thank you, Kamraj, for your participation. And yes, I know you have another commitment.
I want to add, give you a real example of when it comes to the lack of consultation by the PUP administration. And again, I live in Bartica, so I speak a lot because I have the first-hand information as to what is coming out from Bartica. We have right now building being built on the Mongrippa playfield in Bartica, persons that's familiar with the area. We had councillors, elected officials protesting that the location that building is being built on. We have had the this is going through the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports. I can tell you, I consulted with both the mayor, the regional chairman, the RDC had no plan, was in possession of no building plan. The town council was not in possession of any building plan. They have absolutely no knowledge as to how this project is being carried out. But yet this project is being carried out in Bartica. When the councillors go out there and protest, the administration has absolutely nothing to say. But what are they going to come back and say, oh, these people are opposing development? If you don't have a consultation, if you don't have consultation and that consultative process altogether, then you will not give people what they actually need. Monies will be wasted, and the PP government is known for wasting money, doing projects that have that is not something that is required by communities. A lot of buildings being built and being left as white elephants. This is a history of the PP, and we see them continuing now with bigger budgets, more monies to spend. We see it just being accelerated in that manner, disastrous manner that is.
Thank you, Antonio.
No, excuse me, Kathy. Renee asked a question about a case you filed against Jagdeo.
Let me come back to that in a moment. Let me just take these other questions. Antonio, please.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Antonio de Starbuck News. I wish Mr. Ramjitan would have been here to answer this question because it's a legal matter, but I think Mr. Patterson would do justice. Mr. Patterson, today I visited the Procurement Commission, and to my surprise, no meeting was held. I just want to know what was the reason of that. This is concerning the Poi incident. And to answer the question, the chairperson is contending that the law does not provide for them to summon individuals concerning the issue with Akamai and Tupui. I wanted to know if you could be able to highlight to which provision in the Constitution to dispute what she said.
Sorry, David.
Antonio, you're absolutely right. No meeting was held today because they held it yesterday.
Okay.
Right? I think they held it yesterday, and you're absolutely correct. No decision, from what I gathered, has been made on the Tupui contract. And I want to thank Stargroup News and thank, and well, I won't correct you, thank you've been doing yeoman's work on it, and because of that, that's why no report has been issued, because they were considering another whitewashing of a report. Exactly what they've done with Akamai's contract. Received MPTAB's report, said, well, MPTAB said this, we agree with MPTAB, Bob's the uncle. So I think now that it has come to light that how defective and inappropriate it is for a constitutional agency to issue reports like that. They are in a tailspin. So that's why they're changing the dates up and those things like that to keep us on our feet. But we will still resolve ourselves. As Mr. Chana and the Alliance for Change would issued our press release recently saying that the Constitution is the supreme law of the country. And then we would have shared what previous public procurement commissions would have done. This is not a question of summonsing anybody, and so you only have to summons reluctant witnesses or persons like that. Simply receiving a document and sending it to Akamai and says, sir, this is what is claimed by NPTAB. You have not submitted a letter. You don't need no legal authority. It's only to do that. And it's basic natural justice. Meaning, we said the Constitution empowers you to investigate and do all of these things there. So the PPC is hiding behind that. The previous PPC, not only, and there were complaints, and I could particularly recall a complaint on Hague Bosch by a contractor, I think it was Jag Mohan. And he complained about it was the cleaning of Hague Bosch. I don't know how you clean a dump site, but he issued this complaint. This is what the previous PBC did. They wrote to MPTAB, they wrote to Ministry of Housing, and they wrote to the Evaluation Committee. They received responses from them. They then called in Mr. Jagmohan and said, these are responses they gave. Do you have anything to refute what these responses? And he was able to highlight to them where, just like Akamai, where the Evaluation Committee intentionally or unintentionally omitted stuff. They then called in MPTAB, the deputy chairman of MPTAB, to say, so you are the head of procurement. Look what is happening under you. They then call in the evaluators, the 3 evaluators. No summons power, nothing like that. They think. And the 3 evaluators, if you read that report, it's on their website, eventually admitted in the meeting with them, right? Of course, they didn't admit to fraud. They admitted to making a mistake. They admitted that it was their error. And that contract was withdrawn, and the Public Procurement Commission passed a directive that it should be reevaluated. And when it's reevaluated, it doesn't say that the Jagmohan would have won, right? But when it's reevaluated, the most responsive bidder was it. So for the Pauline Chase led PPC to now saying how they don't have any power to summons and they don't have any power to do this. It's all trying to obfuscate the history that there is simply a rubber stamp. They've done, they've done two investigations in 18 months. The term is up next year, July. They get $300 million a year. Ms. Jason gets $1.3 million plus security, plus duty free. Well, duty, we approved it. and public work, we have a PSC, and that does nothing at all. I mean, they pay their lawyer. They have 3 internal lawyers. This is how ludicrous it is. They have a legal department, a senior lawyer and 2 other lawyers. Who wrote them? Who they asked the same question? Do we have the power to investigate? To the internal lawyers, 3 lawyers. Who wrote them said yes, and they quoted all the different sections, exactly what we did in our press release. That was not satisfactory to them. They went to they paid $1 million to a senior counsel who came back and says, yes, you can. So they never made these things public, but obviously it's out that we would have heard about it. So even their internal legal department says, yes, you can proceed by calling in somebody and questioning people and so on. But they don't want to do that. The PUI contract, I say on record, the PUI award is causing them great headache. When a man who starts a company up less than a year ago, wins a contract for $1 billion, and I've said it before, what is serious, and the people of Region 3 Bellevue, this is a sea defense, is an irrigation project. If it is built incorrectly, it will flood the entire Bellevue area, the entire Bellevue, Bell West area. But you give it to a fella whose only credential is a social media comedian. And you try to justify it by saying that he would have built something or something like that. And then you were looking to expand. If you're looking to expand on contractors, you go and find an engineering company and give it to them. If you're looking for new contracts, you don't give it to a social media person with no experience whatsoever. If you want to expand it, let him go and build Barra Jagdeo house or something. Let him experiment on that with his money as opposed to taxpayers' money.
Thank you, David. I want to go straight to Dennis Chibral with apology.
Ms. Patterson, good afternoon. Can you say how many subcommittees are here with the shadow cabinet?
How many subcommittees? I can't. No, they're not subcommittees. We don't have subcommittees in shadow cabinet. It's one. No. We have one thing. I mean, what I think happens is that should a bill come up, we form like a bill on petroleum activities. When that came up, we would form a subcommittee specifically to address that bill, and members who would like to speak on that bill would be part of that subcommittee. So there's no standing subcommittees, as you would say, but the select committees on particular are formed on particular issues.
And if I can add, Dennis, we tend to mirror also the constitutional committees within the parliament structure. So, for example, the natural resources one would be a little subgroup within how we organize and operate as an opposition in the parliament.
So, Mr. Patterson, in light of the fact that the oil and gas responsibilities, I don't want to say portfolio, have been shifted to Mr. Holder, to what extent will you be having any sort of regular interface with him? Because we seem to have a lot of wealth of information and perhaps training in this area.
I can start by answering that the leader of the AFC, Mr. Ramjitan, has publicly stated that Mr. Patterson will speak for the AFC on all matters related to oil and gas.
Yes.
We were issued with a formal list this morning, and I could read what it says it is. David Patterson, Shadow Gas, Shadow Minister, Public Works, with responsibility for public works and oil and gas.
Public works and oil and gas.
Yes, that was issued this morning.
Correct.
This is from the opposition leader.
This is on the hand of the opposition leader.
What are the security motives?
I'm answering you asked David Patterson, and I'm answering for David Patterson.
But as part of the overall shadow number, what does it say as a whole?
It says Shadow Minister Natural Resources
And Region 2.
and Region 2.
Oh, so effectively you're still the overall opposition expressed the of that.
That's correct.
Yeah, don't sound so elated, Dennis.
I know we're really running out of time. I know Davina had
And
another
Antonio.
question.
Yes.
So we'll go with Davina, Antonio, and then
But certainly, Madam Chair, was there any sort of overnight
Dennis, I can say this is this was received this morning. What time? About
this is different from what Mr. Norton said. Was there any overnight?
this was an official communication that came Mr. Norton yesterday.
After the press conference?
Mr. Norton issued this morning about 10 or 11 o'clock this morning.
Overnight calls.
Mr. Norton issued it this morning at 10 or 11 o'clock this morning.
okay, can we move on?
11:25, I've been told that it's
But we have always said, Dennis, in the interest of time, the AFC has always said we have representatives that speak on various areas and various sectors. David Patterson has always spoken on oil and gas. In fairness to the leader of the opposition, he did say that not because one person might be shadowing a specific sector or ministry, does it mean that no one else can speak on that?
Yeah.
So I think we've dealt with this sufficiently. Can I ask Davina to ask her question?
That's a very interesting one.
Thank you. Ghana has yet to implement a public register of beneficial owners that hold licenses for mineral and oil and gas exploration and production activities. Can the AFC say what are its thoughts on this? And finally, from me, Mr. Jagdeo has revealed that a sixth project for Exxon will be approved this quarter. Does the AFC believe that more projects should be approved without any additional benefits for Guyanese? And can you say what are some of the things you would like to see done by government?
Look, the first and foremost on the question of the register, we are a member of EITIA, and EITI regulations dictate. I think we will follow them once again. Dictate that the beneficial owners of any mining concession or license must be in their legislation or not. So our position is obviously, I mean, the EITI is a brainchild of the coalition, not a brainchild. It was brought in under the coalition administration because we particularly were interested in bringing transparency to the mining industry, the whole extractive industry. As you can remember, prior to 2015, there's all sorts of strange, unknown concessions with vague deals and vague beneficial ownership given out under the PPP, and that's why we joined the ITI. So I could go no further and say that if somebody is saying to you that we don't have the legislation, that is irrespective. You joined and you supported the ITI, and one of their requirements are you should have the beneficial owners, the names, and everything like that should be listed for particularly anybody that's getting an extractive license in this country. And secondly, on the sixth project, as Vince said, we and I have said publicly, we do think that that by now, the Guyanese public supposed to be enjoying the bulk share of our oil revenue. The companies have recouped most of their monies already. They have admitted openly that they recouped the cost for Lisa 1, Lisa 2, and shortly they probably recoup the cost for, this is for the FPSO. Yet we don't have the 50-50 regime, profit sharing regime has not in ring fencing, as you would say. I mean, obviously, with additional funds, and I anticipated and I calculated for Lisa 1, Lisa 2, it would be $8 million a year. With a week's revenue, all of the requirements that Ms. Finance raised there could have been funded. Yeah. That's about with a week's revenue. If we had 8 million, that's 56 million. All of the things that we're asking there could have been funded. So that is mean. So if you're asked what we want with the additional revenues, you just simply go back to the list which Ms. Finance raised, which said that what we expect from budget 2020.
No, just for clarity, Mr. Patterson, I wasn't asking what are some of the things you'd like to see funded, but what are some of the measures you would like to see included by government or requested by government in approving this new project, like maybe ring fencing, maybe request taxes to be paid. Those are the specifics.
So no, very specifically, Davina, and offline, I will send it to you. I put in 34 amendments to the Petroleum Activity Bill, and which, and I think that is exactly what we want to see. It included things, ring fencing, it included educational fund, it included studies, baseline studies. You know, mean that no oil company should be conducting going to oil exploration without doing a baseline fishery studies. They promised that in the event of a spill that you must know what you have. So therefore only way you can replace what you've lost is if you know what you had. We put in that they must conduct all of those issues. I had an issues on the depletion fund. You know, that right now there's no depletion fund. It's just on paper. But we said that because obviously there's an issue in Europe at the moment whereby when a field becomes unproductive, they would farm it out to a smaller oil company. I raised this directly with Exxon when we met them, but there's no fund. So therefore, obviously, the fund right now is what you call a book entry. They said they're going to put $1 million or $8 million. They have the money with them and they're using it. They're having interest rate. We're saying no. Put the depletion fund, start it now. You're ready into production 5 years at least. One, start contributing to the depletion fund just so that it's there. You know what I mean? So there's several things that we would have recommended. You know what I mean? Education, things we talk about. But I'll send you a full 34 points that we demanded to be in the legislation, which obviously, if it was in the legislation, would have been benefit, because 6 and future projects would have been benefiting from those.
Okay. Just a quick correction. I think David had a slip of the tongue. I think he meant decommissioning fund, right, David?
Yeah, sorry, the decommissioning fund. Sorry, but that's right. Decommissioning fund, which is the money you put aside to
right. Exactly. You're absolutely correct. Yeah.
The wells around to finish.
Last question from me, Mr. Patterson, and Ms. Finance. What I know the PAC initially have a problem with the current quorum, whereas they're saying that it is constantly undermining the work of the committee. So I wanted to know, now that we're coming up with budget 2024, and they will have some debates and whatnot. Does your position still remain in terms of amending Section 35?
All right. First, let me be say off the bat, yes, it should be changed. And I'm happy that you brought up the PAC because rightly so, we should be the Alliance of Change, myself and Mr. Patterson both sitting on the Public Accounts Committee should be responding to a press release I saw coming out of the government members of the PAC that sought to justify their absence from the PAC meetings. And I can look, I'm quoting here from the DPI report that it is saying here, and they sought to say that during the period 2015 to 2020, when the APNU AFC coalition was in office, the PAC met a total of 46 times, and compare this figure during the period 2020 to 2023, since the PP administration has been in office, the PAC met a total of 58 times. You know, sometimes I wonder, and I beg that persons actually keep refreshing their minds as to how the PAC operates. During the period 2015 to 2020, it was none other than Air Finale that chaired the PAC. And during that period, the quorum did not require any members of the government to attend any meeting. So just to bring this part, just to cancel out what they're trying to do there, when it was Air Finale's responsibility, not the APNU AFC administration between 2015 to 2020 to make sure that there were PAC meetings. So the failure to have those meetings is on the PPP again. So they came around and they changed the quorum to make sure that they had full control over how many times we meet. And as we've been saying, I think the total has gone to 28 times that we have not had meetings because of the failure of the PPP members to meet. There is no time in which the PAC did not meet because the PAC opposition members were unavailable. And I want to say that there is nothing about the 2019 report that is being examined that the AFC parliamentarians or the APNU AFC opposition altogether is running from. And I think it's ludicrous for anybody to say that, oh, well, this was such a stringent year that if it was a stringent year, why isn't the PPP coming to these meetings and bringing out all of these atrocities that they are so purporting to have happened? They should be the ones coming out there to speak about it. If anyone is to join the PAC meetings, you will see the most frivolous of matters they drag out for hours because they try to stymie the work of the PAC because they don't want us to get to their years. And I'm not just going to say that they don't want us to get to their years. I'm going to give you a real example of what they're avoiding us coming to. And let us take the last report that was tabled in the last Auditor General's report that was tabled in National Assembly, that being the 2022 report. I know Starbrook News, for example, should have much interest in this particular finding because it was Starbrook News in December of 2021 that spoke about the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs and Amerindians Purpose Fund, and the fact that the Auditor General has been flagging it as not being kept up to standard. But yet, in the 2020 report, what you will find out is that the government went in the 2022 budget and they said they want $1.8 billion for the Amerindian Development Fund. And as we question it, they went ahead, passed with their one-seat majority in the House. And the very first financial paper, there's additional monies they came from in 2022. Ministry of Amerindian Affairs came back and they said they want $3.1 billion additional money for the Amerindian Development Fund. At that point in time, they would say, oh, we had the conference, National Teachers Conference, and we gave the people a couple hours to decide on what projects they want. They couldn't even go back to the communities and to ask what projects the residents of those communities want, but they just went ahead, gave them a few hours, and they said, oh, well, the sum that they came up to was 3.116 billion and change. Fine. If you were to go to the 2022 findings from the Audit General, you will see that after they went to the National Assembly and got those monies approved, the PVP minister went then and they sought through her staff in the PS and so forth. They requested that that money be transferred now, the 3.116 billion be transferred from the Amerindian Development Fund into the Amerindian Purpose Fund. And I can quote for you what is being said by the Audit Office when it comes to that fund. It is absolute chaos that is going on right now. That is why they don't want us to actually get that. The Audit Office is saying the Amerindian Purpose Fund, despite several requests, the ministry did not present financial statements for the year 2022. An analysis of the cash book for the year 2022 revealed that amounts totaling 302.454 million were received, while amounts totaling 90.921 million were expended. This is the fund that they received approval for 3.116 billion to go in the year 2022. So I just pulled a random one out. I just pulled a random one out for you to understand what is going on and why they don't want us to actually get to these reports, because it is corruption on corruption, every part of the books. So yes, we intend to continue to fight to see if we can have that change, because it is only fair and fitting for scrutiny, accountability, oversight of the PAC that we must go on with the business of the day. And I do know that it was either Minister Teixeira, I believe she was the one that said that is not possible all the time for government ministers to make it every Monday to PAC meetings. We need to be on track. We can't be in 2024 examining 2019 report. It doesn't make any sense. We're not changing anything effectively. It's not efficient. It's almost as though you're making the PAC a rubber stamp when it comes to these matters. We do have another matter. I'm going to just close by saying that we do have a motion that is going to the House when it comes to the PAC to have, because the PAC does not have the power to summon persons to appear before the committee, and we realize that. And we do have that one going forward to the National Assembly. We are hoping to get the full support. So far, no objections from the government members at the level of the PAC. But we do hope to get the ball rolling. And I would really hope if the media, I know you guys have been doing a phenomenal job, but I would really hope if you guys can dig a little bit deeper into these reports that have not yet come up at the level of the PAC to see what is actually going on there.
Thank you, Jerika. Final question.
Can you elaborate on the motion?
The motion is what we found is that to be honest, there's a bit of ambiguity if the PAC has the because the authority to summons a accounting officer who is not in the jurisdiction or who refuses to come to represent his year. They were different interpretations. So to avoid any ambiguity, we're bringing a motion which undivided by the chairman, which will empower you to summon someone specifically and it's limited. It's not just for a response to something in the Auditor General, so we can have the powers of summons. So the motion will come. If it's approved, it will go to Attorney General, who will their office will draft the legislation. So it allows you to, if a former Accountant General, because we refuses to attend, it gives you the amount, the power to sum him or one of the staff that would have been there.
What would be the failure? What would be the penalty for failing?
But that is comes out of the legal draft. And we're simply making a motion, and not PSC is putting up a motion unanimously. The Attorney General and the parliamentary legal they will do the draft, send it back to PSC. As long as we agree, then we can probably incorporate it into.
So a motion will propose then.
No. The motion is promoting that the Attorney General chair Chambers looks in and helps us draft a lot with someone.
Yeah. And it does, if I can add, it does go hand in hand with the fact that what I was just saying, we need to be up to date.
Yes, exactly.
As in the year we're examining, because particularly when it comes to do with statute of limitation legally, we don't want it to be a case in which we're examining a report that 10 years ago, and we've had this matter.
We currently have this by 29 statute of limitation is 3 years, so therefore, obviously, go figure.
Okay, Svetlana.
My question is to Mr. Patterson, based on the initial question with regards to the gas strategy plan. Sorry, you mentioned the master plan that the AP and AFC left in place, and you spoke about having some of that or majority of that incorporated into whatever the government is doing now. What particular aspects would you recommend should definitely be in this gas strategy plan as we move towards that gas energy project?
Well, as I said, the gas energy project has very little to do with the gas part. I mean, the gas energy is a standalone one-off issue, and it was birthed on the APNU because we needed part of our thing. But a gas strategy is almost all encompassing. I mean, we were looking while we were there, included in that gas strategy was say utilization of natural gas for public transportation. You can power a bus, a car. I'm just giving an example. You could so therefore you can do that. I mean, we can use natural gas other than just simply using it for those things. We also spoke about trying to do further processing of the gas and those things. And we also looked at the possibility of containerization and export. We looked at the whole. We looked at power barges as opposed to putting a fixed plant here. The whole strategy was one of the key things that this country has to be here is that the gas ashore project, as they're doing, is a standalone project. What happens in the event of, say, Tullow? If Tullow somewhere in the Kaitro Brook or the Kanji Brook hits a gas field, right? How does that integrate into, because obviously the gas pipe that we're building is owned by Exxon, right? Now, Exxon will not allow Tullow to link up into their gas pipes, unless so forth. So the whole strategy is all encompassing, like we looked at Ghana. Ghana has a hub. Ghana has a hub. So therefore, like a hub. So all the various different operators link into the hub. The hub is owned by the government. So therefore, and that's offshore. So but you must have a whole development plan. You can't go in Wales and then you want one in Berbice, you want one in. When you have a whole plan, you have a hub, and all the various operators that strike oil, they pump into the central hub. The government pays them whatever agreement, and the government takes that and puts it where it wants to. That is what a master plan is. It's not just simply huff and fluff that the Jack Dio keeps doing and talking about urea and talking about this and talking about so what. You must have it not only just how to use the gas, it's to use it's the location, because you're planning for something which you have reasonable, like they may or may not be there, right? So therefore, so you have to have a location, because you can't bring any more gas into Wales. You can't bring any more gas without causing any disruption. The one pipeline they have can only take 144 million cubic feet. Jagdeo and them are talking about trillions of cubic feet. You can understand this. You have. What if a operator hits a pure oil gas field, pure gas, like in Trinidad, the Dragon field and those things like that? I mean, you must have a plan for that. Right, you must have the plan to monetize that. You must have something like that. I mean, you don't wait. It's not like field the dreams, build it, and it will come. And that is what we're saying. That you must think about these things. You must have a location. You know, when we said we wanted to go more eastwards, Burpees, East Coast, those things like that. But you must have they don't have anything. So what will happen is that Jagdeo will get up, wake up, talk to his coonies and his best friends and say, oh, you know, let us go and let's go Parika. Prepare Parika's vote for us, and that's where you can go. There's no plan. So there's several things that we could be doing. I mean, years ago, Trinidad used to provide free natural gas to the taxis, whereby therefore they were hybrid, so that you could offset the cost of taxis and minimum years ago when they were running, and that was since the 90s. We have no plan. We want public transportation. You want to do it with gas? You could have rail, natural gas. I mean, you must have an idea. So if you're gonna have rail, natural gas, you must have a central plant. Can't be over in Wales. I mean, so that is the whole big idea. Right now, it's a open blank canvas. And all Jagdeo, they're doing throwing darts in it rather than painting a picture.
Let me add quickly to what David said. Let us not forget that there's the same contract that is supposed to be, that we're supposed to have sanctity for, said exactly what David is saying, that you must do a feasibility. I think it's section 12. I think it's section 12. You must do a feasibility study for any use of that gas. No feasibility study was done. This was driven by Mr. Jagdeo getting into the office and saying that this here is a no-brainer. A feasibility study would have looked at all of the options of using that gas, all of those options that David is talking about. So now we come up with this grandiose idea that we have to. It's a no-brainer. And the cost has now gone from 700 million to 2-point-something billion. That's what you get when you do not plan. And the Vice President has made it very clear that planning and doing feasibility studies and those type of things are not part of how they will operate. That is the problem.
Thank you, Vince. And I want to thank the media for participating in what was an extended, but I think very worthwhile press conference. There was a question posed to me by Renee in terms of an update on those legal challenges that I have posed to the courts. And I wanted to say that both have been filed and served. No defense yet. I know she asked specifically with regards to the vice president. No defense has been filed from them yet, but of course, we have filed and served all our documents. On the case with regards to the establishment of the Human Rights Commission, we have not yet, the law office has not yet been able to serve the leader of the opposition. I've been told that they've tried to reach him on 3 occasions, the leader of the opposition. They've tried on 3 occasions, but hope that that they will be able to do that soonest. And just to clarify, the establishment of the Human Rights Commission requires both the participation in terms of submission of names from the leader of the opposition and, of course, the president. Thank you very much and see you soon.
Thanks all.